Appreciate that in Australia we have certain freedoms and liberties that we hold very dear, and I think it's at times where we feel like some of those liberties and freedoms are under threat that we ask ourselves, how must we defend the most vulnerable of our community? This is a question that policymakers, lawmakers and anyone in a position of authority or making decisions ask themselves. As the Muslim community more specifically, and this might come up in some of the discussions that the members of the panel will bring up, there are certain concerns that the Muslim community itself has, and this is the purpose of the meeting tonight. As some of you might know, the Australian Defence League has, I guess, kind of upped its activities in the last couple of months or so. There was a recent incident in which a Muslim sister who was employed at a particular train station had her photograph taken by a member of the ADL. That was uploaded to the ADL's page. Vitriol ensued, and it's taken a very, very long process to actually get that photo removed. As we know, there's been planned activities of the ADL in these regions. So we're here to actually start the discussion. What can the police do? What does the ADL want? How can we deal with it from a legal perspective and a legal paradigm? And how do we, as members of the community, engage with these issues? At the outset, we'd also like to acknowledge the fact that some issues that the Muslim community specifically deals with includes the fact that some members don't feel physically safe to actually walk around these areas, and that includes Muslim women especially that can be identified as Muslims. There's been reported incidents to the police and to local communities in relation to these cases which women have been assaulted. There's also some barriers to reporting, and this is something that definitely the police and community engagement officers have been liaising with and dealing with. There's also some issues that the community itself, and in terms of the leadership and the, I guess you can call it so-called the young generation, have issues in terms of channels of appropriate, I guess, activism, and also how to deal with issues of contention or concern. So sometimes, for example, injunctions from what I've termed the elders or leaders might not necessarily reflect what is done at a grassroots level and vice versa. So what do we do about community to kind of synergy and create change in that regard? And often, and this is something the police can also speak about, it's seen at a community level that police come in to penalise retaliatory in a retaliatory stance rather than kind of assist the community from a preemptive level. Now, that's, again, a myth out, whether it's a myth, whether it's fact. We're here to talk to you guys about this, and that's definitely something that the community has issues with. Anyone, and Rick will have a chat about this, in terms of the legal system, there are the barriers, as we all know, in relation to access to the legal system, access even from an economic disadvantage level, access to free legal advice. When we're talking very contentious areas that not a lot of solicitors, for example, might have expertise in, such as the new and emerging social media laws and other laws in relation to vilification. And I think finally we can all encompass it in our concern and our regard for immediate solutions. And this is something that a lot of, I guess, young people or even community members generally experience. When your photo is plastered on Facebook, what do? It's fair enough for us to sit and talk about policy and long-term solutions and things like that, but I think as members of the community they also feel like as an immediate strategy, what help is there out there for me and what can I do? In addition to that, and this is something that the Honourable Shaoquett will also discuss, in relation to, we can't blind ourselves to the legal development in relation to the amendments to certain sections of the legislation that would actually impact minority groups like us. So I guess I've opened up a can of worms, and it's up to our esteemed panellists to try and tackle these issues, and would love to see that this is the beginning of a conversation, it's not the end of the conversation. As I said here earlier, you're all here, you've kind of, battled the elements of the rain and the wind to be here with us tonight. So we're here to discuss pertinent issues and have answers and discuss those key concerns that we hold. Audience, Heather Ali, who is an Australian Defence League and social media expert. We have the New South Wales Deputy Commissioner, Kaldas. We have Mitry, who's a criminal lawyer. Dr. Yassir Morrsi, the Honourable Shaoquett Moselmane, and Dr. Jamal Rifi. So we'll get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Heather Ali. She grew up in inner Sydney. She has reverted to Islam in the year 2000. She has a background in criminology, community service and advocacy. She currently works and is a management committee member on a board of a not-for-profit women's association that helps provide a range of services to help women in the community. Heather is one of the administrators of the group Aussies Against the Australian Defence League Facebook page, and I'd love to see the mechanisms of that, and has been following the actions of the ADL for several years. So.
Foundation of the ADL, the original one, was started by a man named Martin Brennan, and he came over here from England. He was a member of the English Defence League. This is what their little group is based on. And through the years, they've had a lot of little fights, and now we have a new one. And the new one, its charter president, is Ralph Seminara. Of late, they have become considerably more aggressive, and it mostly seems to have occurred at the joining of Nathan Abella, who was their charter president for Western Sydney. So people might have noticed that a whole bunch of YouTube videos went up. Nathan Abella wandering around Maryland handing out offensive material, wandering outside of Islamic school in Chullora, things like that. And basically this is where we've come here today, because there have been threats made that they're going to turn up on Good Friday outside the Canberra Mosque, possibly drinking alcohol, and probably with offensive signs. So mostly I came along here to discuss what you can do about them if they do post your pictures on their Facebook page, what you should do if their members make credible threats towards you on the picture, and how you can protect yourself on Facebook from harassment from the Australian Defence League, and what you should do if you do come in contact with them, and what you should do if they turn up to the mosque, and what you should be aware of. So they sort of operate on a how offensive can we be to get you to attack me, and that's probably what will occur if they turn up, which they may not. And basically that's about the high and the low of what we're here for today.
I'm told there's 3 or 4 issues that everyone's interested in, and I'm very happy for the opportunity to be able to talk to you about them tonight. I have a few people with me that I just want to mention, if I may, very quickly. We have representatives from Campsie Police, from Bankstown Police, and from the Community Contact Unit, as well as my office, obviously. The reason we're all here, and we're here in reasonably large numbers, is because we see this as a very important issue. We've been to quite a few forums in the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue to attend. If you're kind enough to invite us, we'll always turn up. It means a lot to you. It's something that's very important to you, and therefore it is important for us, obviously. There will be others in the room who are much more expert in the background of the ADL, but I do want to make a couple of comments about them. The reality is they have very small numbers, and not much of a following, apart from people obviously who sit at home on their computer. And while it is a painful thing to see the rotten, horrible stuff that is posted on the internet sometimes, it's not helpful to disseminate further and to pass on some of that stuff to your friends or whatever. All we're doing is simply perpetuating the cycle. If you do become aware of this stuff, shut it down. You don't have to have a look at it, you don't have to pass it to your friends. All it does is gives them credibility, and it gives them more credit than they actually deserve. It's best not to disseminate it any further. So that's the first bit of advice. The second thing is that I want to acknowledge the bravery of those who have come forward and made a complaint. It is a very hard thing to do for a victim of something like this, when they've been humiliated on the internet, to stand up and say, I'm not going to take it, I'm going to make a complaint, I'm going to go to the police. And we encourage that and acknowledge the bravery of those who have come forward, and we'll always be there for them. Your first port of call for reporting this should be your local area command, the nearest police station. And from there, we'll pick it up and see what we can do. What we can do and what we can't do. And I know this is something that is a little bit controversial. The internet has raced ahead, way ahead of the legislation, and probably way ahead of law enforcement in many ways. It's very difficult for us to prove who posted something on the internet and when and where they actually did it. And that's our problem. While something may be very clearly offensive, and if it was said on the street, you would have no trouble arresting and charging the person, it's very difficult to do it off the internet. We just don't know. And the current case in point is one that we're trying to sort out. It's very difficult to prove who accessed what website, at what time, from what internet entry, and what they put on there. It's also difficult for us to contact and stay in touch with and influence the companies such as YouTube and Facebook, but we have done so. And there's been a number of complaints made to Facebook in particular from members of the community. That's been helpful, and it's added to our voice. We are in touch with them. They're in America, as you know, which makes it even more complicated. Sometimes some of these things are alleged to have been posted from somewhere overseas, which makes it awfully hard for us, the police in Sydney, to be able to do anything about it. But we are in touch with them, and we are trying to talk our way through what they can and can't do, and they have been receptive most of the time. Quite a few things have been pulled down from Facebook in particular at our request, and I know there's been requests from the public as well that have added to that voice, so which is good. I just want to put to bed the issue of Good Friday. I'm told that the ADL announced initially they were going to go to a mosque and play up on Good Friday. I'm certain that's not the case at the moment. A lot's happened in the last week. Every bit of information we have tells us that they are not going to attempt to turn up at the mosque. Having said that, if they do, the community needs to know, the public needs to know, we will be there, we're with you, and we will be doing something about it. We're not going to let it happen. I just want to also mention a couple of other things. Really just by way of background, so you're aware, the New South Wales Police has a number of layers of interaction and engagement with the community. We have multicultural liaison officers in most of the stations now. They're people drawn from the community. They're not police officers. They're drawn from the communities, and they stay in touch with the communities and keep us informed. They're a real good window or conduit for us for information and exchange of information. We also have, in each of the 6 regions in New South Wales, one of the superintendents is tasked with being a sponsor for multicultural issues. And they really get across their brief, and they understand a lot of what happens, and they've been very helpful. Above them, we have a corporate sponsor for the whole organisation, if you like, for multiculturalism. And for the first time, it's actually at my level, it's me. I'm the Deputy Commissioner. I'm effectively second in charge of the police. I'm in charge of all the stations in New South Wales and a few other things. And I am focused on this issue, and I am focused on your needs. The next thing we have is a committee that oversights everything I've just explained to you, called the Police Multicultural Advisory Council. It's chaired by the Commissioner of Police. The Deputy Chair is me, and it has representatives from around the communities right across New South Wales. Some of them are here tonight, and they have direct access to the CEO, or the boss of the organisation, and the number 2, if you like. And we discuss all sorts of issues very regularly. They bring problems to the table. We bring our problems to the table. We tell them what we're doing. We tell them why we do and what we can't do, and we discuss all these issues. And finally, we have created a couple of years ago, a bias-motivated crime coordination area. That is an area within the police that does nothing but monitor bias, or let's call it what it is, hate-motivated crime. They effectively sit there and trawl all our systems and see if there's any incidents that fit that description, whether it's graffiti or something on the internet or whatever, study it and advise the local area commands about what to do. We have a range of other activities that I'm not going to bore you with today, including cultural awareness training, cultural diversity team, which effectively delivers a whole bunch of policy for us in relation to this stuff. The final thing I'll leave you with is that it's been said that a measure of any society is how it protects its weakest, those who can't stand up for themselves. There have been incidents in the last few weeks where women have been picked on simply because of their religion or their appearance. It's unacceptable, we will not tolerate it, and we will be there to do something about it. It is a measure of a society, how you defend your weakest people, and on that, I hope we'll stand judged. Thank you.
For commercial litigation and transaction and international law, Rick has practiced as a barrister and a solicitor and has been involved in a number of high-profile cases. Rick has established several legal and business articles, including Business Law of the Middle East and the Law of Diplomacy and the Rules of Protocol. He has a number of political and business delegations in the... he has led a number of political and business delegations in the Middle East. Was the founder of the Australian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce in 1985, as well as a local chapter of the International Association of Lions Club. And Mitry Lawyer was also the winner of the 2014 Global Award for Boutique Defence Law Firm.
Legal remedies available to individuals and community groups for social media attacks, which is more commonly known, I suppose, as cyberbullying, including by way of photographs, the use of phone and other electronic devices to make threats or menace, defamation and racial discrimination. Now, that sounds like a law degree, but I promise you I'm only going to give a very brief expose on each. I'll briefly address the issue too, at the end, as to whether or not racism in Australia results in inequality before the law. Okay, the use of mobile phones, emails or social networking sites to harass or abuse a certain person or groups of people can be a crime under either New South Wales or national law, when it involves using the internet or a phone in a threatening, harassing or offensive way. Threats or intimidation, stalking, including messaging someone to harm or scare them, accessing internet accounts without permission, defamation, which is spreading lies to intentionally hurt someone's reputation, and encouraging suicide. It's a crime to use a phone on the internet to threaten, harass, seriously offend somebody. A message or post could be considered offensive if it's likely to cause serious anger, outrage, humiliation, or disgust. The maximum penalty for that is 3 years. Now, that would indicate to many of you who don't know that defamation, if it's serious enough, is a criminal offence. In 2010, a 20-year-old guy from Queensland sent threats and hate-filled texts and Facebook messages to his ex-girlfriend and a new boyfriend. He was found guilty of using a phone and internet services in a menacing, harassing or offensive way, and he was placed, lucky enough to go to jail, he was placed on a probation with an order to attend counselling. It's a crime to intentionally frighten somebody by threats or intimidation. This can be through your phone or text messages, emails or online posts. Threatening to kill someone carries a maximum penalty of 10 years jail. It's also a crime in New South Wales to make or encourage others to make threats or physical harm to a person or their property because of their race or sexual orientation. The maximum penalty is 6 months in jail. Stalking is when somebody gets repeated attention that intimidates or frightens them. Stalking can include making unwanted phone calls, emails, text messages and messages on Facebook or Twitter. And it's a crime in New South Wales if you intend to cause another person to fear for their own safety with your unwanted calls or messages. The maximum penalty there is 5 years jail. In 2009, a guy in Victoria copied pictures of his girlfriend's from his girlfriend's profile and posted them on adult websites, pornography sites, along with her name and contact details. He was found guilty of stalking and he was sentenced to jail. In 2011, a teenager in Western Australia who had befriended an American girl on Facebook began sending her threatening messages and unwarranted and unwanted gifts. He was also arrested and jailed. Now, just very briefly, it's a crime in New South Wales to publish untrue statements about someone in order to cause them serious harm. The maximum penalty is 3 years in jail, and I'll address the civil remedies for defamation a little bit later on. A teenager in 2009 in South Australia made a harassing Facebook page about a local police officer. I think he was fairly courageous to do that, but he was found guilty of defamation and placed on a 2-year good behaviour bond. In New South Wales and in the Commonwealth laws, it's a crime to cyberbully someone in a way that intentionally encourages or causes that person to kill themselves. The maximum penalty is 5 years in jail. Most websites have ways of checking what's being posted. Users can flag and report any nasty contents to the website administrator. Websites can remove things in your own account, including photographs, which they find inappropriate. I want to address briefly I know there's not many young people here, but parents should be aware of the issue of bullying at school. All schools in New South Wales should have anti-bullying plans in place to deal with bullying and other cyber, as well as cyberbullying. Schools are responsible for making sure students know what their anti-bullying plan is, and teachers are responsible for making sure that the plan is followed. If they don't do that, then they obviously will be liable for civil action in case bullying leads to any damage to anyone. Students who bully other students or teachers can be suspended, of course, in some cases expelled. In 2011, a group of young people in New South Wales created a sex page on Facebook. That page asked Facebook users from local schools to send information about the people they had sex with, including descriptions of their bodies and scores for their sexual performance. The page then posted this information for all its friends to see. It was taken down, but local schools threatened to expel the students, and in fact, the New South Wales Police said that this could lead to criminal charges against those students who participated. So they're the summary of the criminal aspects of some of the issues we're talking about today, but I just wanted, I've been asked to speak very briefly about defamation in social media. When someone makes, on any social media, comments or posts pictures, photos which damage someone's reputation, they can be sued by the victim for defamation and other claims as well. A person or company with less than 10 employees can sue for defamation for any representation which might have subjected them to humiliation, ridicule or contempt. This could constitute a photograph if the photo would have that effect. A photo can be published on social media like any comment. If it is downloaded in New South Wales, it can be sued for in New South Wales. And the law of defamation applies to all media publications, as well as the person who makes the post, the website hoster, and the social media network and anyone involved in the publication. In 2008, a court in Victoria ordered this guy to pay his ex-girlfriend $40,000 compensation for the suffering he caused when he threatened to release sex tapes of her. She had sued him for invading her privacy, breaching her trust, and intentionally causing her emotional distress. Now, if you're bullied, you really should talk to someone, whether you're an adult at work or your children at school. And just in relation to what you said, Natisa, about the inability to seek legal assistance, there are a number, in fact just about every major suburb now has a community legal centre. I'm involved with the Chmali Legal Centre, for example, which services a large area around Blacktown. I'm sure Bankstown has a community legal centre, which is slightly different than legal aid. You have to qualify to get legal aid assistance. However, community legal centres, CLC, they're in the phone book, you Google them, you'll see a whole list of them all over Sydney. They're always good to talk to if you can't talk to anyone else. If it happens to you, my advice, for what it's worth, is to keep calm. Because if you're having issues with your friends or someone else, whether it be at work, school or any other place, try not to react to them via email, text, or social networking sites. Because it's easier to say something hurtful when you're angry or upset, but once it's written down or posted online, it's permanent. Nothing is ever private online, even after you delete it. It will never disappear. As I said, talk to someone. If someone writes something or posts a photo that upsets you, scares you, or makes you feel uncomfortable, talk to a friend, a lawyer, your parents, or another trusted adult. You don't have to deal with hurt feelings of embarrassment on your own. The sooner you tell someone, excuse me, the sooner something can be done about it, and you can feel safe. Excuse me. Now, don't forget to always record your evidence. If you go along with the police, the first thing they're going to ask you for is, what's your evidence? If you don't have any, they're not going to be able to help you much. So take screenshots of, or print off any bullying messages or posts. Record the times and dates and keep a chronological report of this, of any harassing phone calls. You can start off by asking the person who posts an offensive message to simply delete it. It's often the easiest thing to do, and you can tell them that their actions could be a crime. If they refuse to delete it, if you can send, you can ask your lawyer or community legal. Excuse me. If all else fails, and that's, I know that the police officers will thank me for this. If all else fails, then you can go to the police. If you believe that you are the victim of any of the crimes, you can report them to the police. And if someone is threatening or scaring you, or if your situation involves a nude or sexual image of a young person, please contact the police immediately. Now, so, in summary, think carefully before posting or sending anything. Remember that online actions have real-life consequences, and that anything you say can be saved and shared with others. If you have pretended to be someone else online, it's usually best to apologise and take down any offensive materials as soon as possible. Though I've had a lot of cases where people have pretended to be someone else and started attacking others, and they get found out and they follow the IP address. I don't know if that's a technology that is very efficient, but they find that person through the IP address, and they join them as defendants to the shock and horror of the person who's the perpetrator. It's always it's always important to talk to a trusted advisor, and remember that whatever you put online stays online forever. I think that Rebecca wanted me to talk a little about anti-discrimination laws, and I'll do that as well. That's very topical currently, of course. And if you're a victim of discriminatory comments from a person at work or school, unwelcome sexual advances or sexual threats, you have a right to make a complaint in New South Wales to the Anti-Discrimination Board, or if it's a Commonwealth jurisdiction that you'd like to go to, you go to the Australian Human Rights Commission. A comment may be discriminatory if it makes fun of somebody because of their race, sexuality, or transgender identity. The process for making a complaint is quite simple, really. It's not that difficult. You can do it yourself. You don't need to go to a lawyer and pay a lawyer or any other expert in the area. You can go online to the Anti-Discrimination Board website or the Australian Human Rights Commission, download a complaint form and fill it up and send it in. That will lead to a conciliation process. If that fails, you may make an application then to the Equal Opportunity Division of the Administrative Division, Decisions Tribunal in New South Wales if it's a state matter. Or if you want to, you can go to the Federal Court or the Australian or Federal Magistrates Court if it's a Commonwealth matter. Now I know that Shaoquett wants to say a little bit about Section 18C of the Commonwealth Racial Discrimination Act and the proposed amendments. But I just want to put in my 2 words, if I can, Shaoquett. The current Australian government is the most right-wing government we have ever seen in the history of this country. Oh, good. One person agrees.
I'm a politician, so I second that.
Yeah, oh, you too. You work for them, don't you? Right, with the same alarming lack of wisdom, that they have shown in their dealings with refugees. Now, talking about refugees, Lebanon is a country of 4 million people. Guess how many refugees there are in Lebanon? Anyone like to have a guess?
1 million.
1 million? I heard there was 1.5 million Syrian refugees. And
1 million registered with UN.
And 500,000 Palestinian refugees remain there. So that's a country of 4 million people. So there's 6 million people living in that country now, and almost a quarter of them, or more, a third of them, are refugees. How many people does Australia have? Does anyone know the population of Australia? It's around 20 million, isn't it?
No.
22.
What is it? 22 million.
Oh, 24 million. So why are we so panicky when there's a boat of about 20 people coming into the onshore? Is there a problem that we have to renege on our obligations under the United Nations Charter that we've signed? Anyway, I better not. Is that all right? Okay. So, George Brandis, the Attorney General, who recently made that infamous comment that Australians have the right to be bigots, now proposes to amend the Racial Discrimination Act to repeal the words likely to offend, insult, or humiliate from Section 18C. In other words, he's saying it's okay to offend, insult, or humiliate people. Even Mark Dreyfus, the previous Attorney General who was of Jewish descent, said that if it was repealed, that would carry the implication that Australia no longer cares about hate speech, which would be a worry. The contention that everyone has the right to be a bigot is an intellectual, existential question, I suppose, as someone said the other day. Now, we all know that George, well, people know him, tell me that he's far from being an intellectual, but he's a public official who should not be making such provocative and inflammatory statements. Can I go on?
Yeah, go on. I'll sit down.
It is worth noting that under the current legislation, yeah, that's right. Okay, let me see what the juicy parts are here that I can finish off with. This is the profile. The legal system will deal with them differently. You just can't avoid that. And but this xenophobia results in consequences adverse to our relations in the region as well. What sort of message are we sending out to our Asian and other trading partners? We're failing to take advantage of the multicultural community that we have here in reaching out to the rest of the world in commerce and trade, and it contributes to backward thinking in Australia remaining a monarchy, such as the recent quaint reintroduction of dames and knights, and having a head of state who is a foreigner and resides overseas rather than being a republic that has an Australian head of state and stands on its own 2 feet. So minority groups must assert themselves as part of the mainstream and assist each other in their endeavours to be part of the mainstream, whilst preserving their wonderful religions and cultures. Thank you.
You can define what that means. Triple the numbers of karate and soccer players, graduated 22 swimming instructors, and also oversaw the recruitment and training of 17 Arabic background young men and women as surf lifesavers. He was a member of the New South Wales Expert Advisory Group on Drugs and Alcohol, a former Community Relations Commissioner, and a chairman of the Voice of Islam radio station. In 2007, he was a recipient of the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission Award. In 2009, was a part of the Australian of the Year Awards, and he was nominated as the New South Wales Local Hero of the Year. He is currently a member of the Immigration Minister Advisory Council on Asylum Seeker and Detention. So, Rick, you might want to have a chat to him about your asylum seeker concerns after that. Join me in welcoming Dr. Jamal.
And in terms of the Section 18, there will be a walk from Halden Street, Lakemba, to Perry Park on Sunday the 25th, and from midday, and it's going to actually walk for respect, and that's what we want. That's in terms of Section 18. As a matter of the refugees, I just placed it on the record. Yes, I've been a member of the Advisory Council since 2009. I don't work for the government. Those government policies are draconian policies, and I have no doubt that in the future they will be condemned in the same way as the White Australia policy have been condemned. But it is not reason for me to actually resign. That is the easiest decision. The harder one is to sit there and let them hear my voice. So, I'll start and I'll go back to why we are here. They gave me 5 minutes. To be honest, I need 5 seconds. My message is one sentence. Be alert, not alarmed. Be rational and do not overreact or do not react negatively. So to the sisters out there, and I'll say, be alert, not alarmed. For the brothers out there, and I will say, be rational, do not overreact, and do not react negatively. That is the shorter version of my speech. The longer one is very simple again. For years we did actually tried, and we have ignored this group, because we all heard that this is the third reincarnation of the IDL. We always wanted not to give them any publicity, any credibility, or any headlines. Unfortunately, recently, they have traumatized many people that we care about. And they have been a threat to community harmony. And that's why we are here tonight. The IDL is a far-right extremist organization that claims it is trying to defend Australia from radical Islam. In reality, what they are doing, they are attacking ordinary, law-abiding Australian citizens. The real truth is IDL itself, by sedition, inflammatory rhetoric, and actions, which seeks to promote ill will and hostility between components of Australian society, and endanger the peace and community harmony in Australia. They are a serious threat to public order and danger to community harmony, and that's why we are here tonight. Those law-abiding citizens of this great Australian democracy who happen to be Muslim will do, and they have been doing, our part in facing this new menace to Australian society's harmony. We urge everyone, especially those who are affected, to use the full spectrum of legal recourses and civil response. Full spectrum of legal recourses and civil response. IDL seeks to become a disruptive force, and they have been a disruptive force to public order. We as Australian Muslim community, as any other responsible citizens, we have mobilized ourselves to defend Australian laws and values in much in the same way as we did response previously to the Cronulla riot and other events in Australia. Our advice, if you are affected by the IDL directly or indirectly, my advice, you have heard it from the expert. Just follow what they have said. And in general, we would like you to be informed, we would like you to be logical. You need to be aware about the context of how and why the IDL operate in such a way. They are a keyboard warriors. They live in cyberspace. They have no actions whatsoever. They wanted to come down to the street to show their face. They are much more cowards than doing so. And we have the police on our side. We have the right on our side. We want you to understand that we are not left alone. There are a lot of actions that have taken place. You may not have heard about it, but it doesn't mean it did not take place. There has been a high level of communications well before this event. We've spoken with the hierarchy of the police, community organization structures, LMA, Muslim Women Association, Islamic Council of New South Wales, SalamCare, and we have actually mobilized to protect our sisters and brothers, but at the same time we have acted as any responsible citizen will act when any member of community is faced with such a derogatory remark, and we needed to act, and the best way is to engage the law enforcement. And that's why we acted in such a way. We would like you to trust our community organization. They do a lot of work behind the scene. The last thing that we didn't want is to give this group any credibility.
manifest through racism like the ADL. And the reason why is that I reject categorically, every part of me rejects the idea that the ADL should be seen as the face of racism in Australia. The ADL has been said is what, 300? Incarnated 3 times? So, 1,200? 12? So what? That's not where they get their strength from. It's not numbers. They've gained their strength from 10 to 15 years of conversations about Islam and Muslims in Australia, in the media, by politicians, in regards to our nature and who we are. And I find it somewhat problematic as a Muslim being asked to confront those who believe and advocate narratives about radical Muslims, about terrorists, and at the same time they say they're alongside me, helping me fight against a racism that has been manifested by the very same rhetoric that our politicians and police officers have used. That's what's confusing for me. Now, that's not to say that I don't think we should work with them. As I said, as a Muslim man, you give me these answers. Tell me where I draw a line and I delineate between the sand, between those who say, hey, you're on our side fighting some mythical radicals that are in the suburbs. But on the other side, the ADL who are, let's face it, I gotta admit, the stuff I've read from them, they're idiots. I'm not ashamed to say that, they're stupid. They didn't get this Islamophobia from themselves. They didn't get it from a serious textual hermeneutical study.
I'm here at Bankstown Town Hall to speak at the public forum about various matters, but my speech will be on the anti-discrimination legislation, repeal legislation that the federal Abbott government is about to undertake. The federal Abbott government is proposing to repeal Section 18C, capital C, of the Racial Discrimination Act 1975. And this is a very significant event in Australian history. The repeal of such act will have significant consequences not only on multicultural Australia and the way that we are identified not only nationally but internationally, because what it does simply repeals the right of protections that Australians have under the Racial Discrimination Act. By repealing the Section 18C, it effectively gives the right of people, as the Attorney General George Brandis said, the right to be bigots, and that is totally unfortunate for multicultural Australia, where people will now be subject to extreme racism simply because of their race, ethnic background, and or their colour, and that's something that Australia has been against all along, and in a multicultural society such as Australia, it would be a real shame to have the Section 18C repealed, simply because, as George Brandis, the highest lawyer in the land, simply wants, as he argues, so that it empowers others to have a greater freedom of speech. Well, people can have their freedom of speech, and we support freedom of speech, but to have freedom of speech to insult and denigrate and dehumanize other people because of their color, race, or ethnicity is totally unacceptable. You can make your point, you can argue your point, but you don't need to insult and abuse people because of their color, race, and ethnicity. Imagine in the middle of Bankstown, imagine in the middle of City or Lakemba or anywhere in New South Wales, where now people can call each other names in such insulting manner without having the protections that they currently have under the Racial Discrimination Act. So it's a real shame that this federal government is proposing that. I hope they don't proceed with it. I hope the people of New South Wales get up and oppose this and they petition the federal government and ensure that the proposal that George Brandis and the Abbott government is undertaking at the moment, they do not proceed with. It would be it would be a disaster for Australia, not only, as I said, for people of New South Wales, but people internationally who recognise Australia as being a successful multicultural community, whereby people are free to speak, people are free to live their culture, people are free to speak their language, and people are free to engage. But now, people who are the poorest people, indigenous people, and the people who new migrants will be subject to such attacks, which we condemn, and that's something that we in the Australian Labor Party oppose, and we hope that people across not only New South Wales but across the state, as I say, rise up and oppose this legislation, write to Tony Abbott, write to George Brandis, and ensure that they get the message that we do not agree, we do not accept, we do not support the repeal of Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act.